Welcome back. We're joined with our mortgage expert today, Steve Tetzner, and finally we have you back here. It's been over a year. It's great to not have to talk to you through just an earpiece and seeing you on the screen. So
it's great to be back in the studio.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So obviously the real estate market is just booming and been crazy, and you are directly affected by that, as we all are, but probably you're closer to that. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on in the current markets today?
Yeah, I mean, the housing market and people purchasing homes is just insane. I mean, property comes on the market, and if it's priced correctly, it's just a competitive bid situation. Houses are selling well over list prices in many cases, and it's challenging. You know, from the financing side, we have to be very creative because the financing aspect of the way the person is obtaining the financing affects their ability to get their offer accepted in this market. So people don't even think about those things, but it's certainly very true right now.
Was it like this in previous markets, or kind of?
Never seen this. No. I've been doing this for 26 years, and even back in the boom in 2006, it wasn't this bad.
Really?
This is crazy.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit, maybe, and again, I know very time sensitive can be some of the rates, but maybe the rates for different sorts of terms that are out there?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the rates have been bouncing a little bit in a small, very small margin. So the 30-year mortgage with no points has been either 2.625 or 2.75 with good credit. The 20-year money is about 1/4% cheaper, and the 15 years been really consistent, very flat at 2%, and that's with no points. So I mean, rates are still really phenomenal. I've a lot of clients that buying homes that could pay cash, but the 15-year money is so cheap, they're like, it's free money. Take it.
They can invest their money elsewhere.
And they're investing it with good people like you.
Yeah. All right, so one of the things that the pandemic brought upon us was adverse market refinancing fee. Obviously,
Correct.
I wrote that down. I couldn't remember it. But can you tell us what the status of that is, or first of all, what it is and what's the current status of it?
Yeah, so basically what it was is Fannie and Freddie were losing a ton of money with all the refinances and the bonds being paid off early. So the government allowed them to implement a 50 basis point charge on all refinance transactions. So what that means is if somebody was taking out a $100,000 mortgage and they were buying the house and they were getting a 2.75 rate with no points, if they were refinancing under the same terms, it would be 2.75, but they would have to pay a 1/2 point, which is $500. Okay. So it was a 1/2 point fee assessed to the refinance.
That was up front, correct?
It was part of, it's up front basically. So basically the person would either have to pay that as part of their refinance, or they would take 1/8% higher interest rate. So it made refinance rates actually 1/8% higher than people who are buying homes.
Okay.
So that fee a few weeks ago was actually eliminated. The bulk of the refinances have gone through. So what that's done is it's actually made refinance rates come down a little bit. Okay. And so we caught another little flurry of people who were, waiting for a little blip in the market to jump on it. People who, didn't act last year or earlier this year. So, the refinances are certainly nowhere near as busy as we were, but there's still quite a few people that, didn't come around or were unemployed and weren't able to, now getting back to work. So we're seeing more people coming back for refi.
Now, the refinance over the summer months, has it been pretty flat? Is that what you meant? Or has it come down a little bit? I can't even really remember the last 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, so I mean, the end of last year, the beginning of this year, we were beyond busy. I mean, couldn't keep up. Now it's still busy, but it's at a manageable level. So I would say the refinancing is probably down from its peak by 60%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. All right. So let's switch gears a little bit. And obviously, the market rates, market pricing on housing locally and everywhere is through the roof.
Correct.
And this is something you and I kind of talked about previous to the show, but I think it's super important because it's the reality, and people understand that, hey, if I'm overpaying for this house and it appraises under a certain amount, how does that affect my mortgage? I mean, that seems like a big deal. And I don't understand exactly what would change, but can speak to that if you could.
That's one of the biggest challenges we're having in the purchase market right now, is because people are bidding so high above the list prices that the market hasn't caught up. So an appraisal, what they're doing is they're looking at comparable sales, properties that have already sold, and that could be a few months ago. And the appreciation is so quick that, a house that was purchased 6 months ago to today, that house is appreciated in value already. Wow. And so the comps are sometimes just not there. The comparable sales are not there to be able to support the new sale price of the new property going under contract. So it's become a huge challenge for appraisers and for lenders, because if somebody's doing maximum financing, like an FHA loan or a conventional loan where they're only putting 3 or 5% down, if the property doesn't appraise, we're unable to approve the loan. So they would have to either go back to the seller and say, we need to renegotiate the price, or they would need to come up with the difference between the appraised value and the sale price in addition to their down payment.
So that puts the seller really at a disadvantage if they're accepting an offer from someone who's only putting down 3 or 5%, correct?
That's correct. And
do they know that up front, the seller?
Well, if they have a good realtor, they do. And that's why, you're seeing a lot of the good realtors, people who are trying to do like the first-time home buyer, no money down, or the low money down programs. It's a very challenging time for them right now because they're having a hard time getting offers accepted. So if they go in, with a bid at 300 and they're putting no money down, and somebody else goes in at a bid at 300 and they're putting 20% down, the seller's going with the 20% down buyer. So the type of financing that the buyer is using to obtain the property affects their ability to get an offer accepted in this market.
Got it.
One of the other things we've seen is traditionally with first-time home buyers, the seller is agreeable to roll the closing costs into the sale price and credit it back to the buyer so that they don't have to put as much money out of pocket. That's almost non-existent in the market because now the house it puts more pressure on the appraisal. The house has to appraise not only for the price they're paying, but the price plus the closing costs.
Right.
So sellers are very reluctant to roll closing costs into the deals now.
So the seller should be and is probably in this market in almost most of the control,
It's 100% a seller's market, yeah. It's crazy.
And if that situation happens where they say, listen, I don't have a lot of people looking to buy my house right now, and they take an offer for someone that's putting down, call it 3 or 5%, ultimately that person, if now it appraises much lower than what you bought it for, they have to come up with that difference in cash?
Right, and a lot of times the first-time home buyers don't have that money. They don't have those resources, which means that the seller has to decide, do I want to lower the price of my house, or do I want to take a shot and put the house back on the market and try to find another buyer? That's a tough call.
So to our viewers, if you're selling, make sure that you really pay attention to that.
Yeah, pay very close attention. Make sure you have a good realtor that understands financing because just accepting the highest offer is not always the best thing for the seller.
Right, and a buyer in that situation may possibly, if they have the resources, borrow from a family member. They can obviously do that, right?
They can do a gift.
They can do a
Yep.
gift.
Can't borrow money towards the transaction, but they could do a gift.
Okay, all right, so something to kind of keep in mind there.
Yep.
All right, let's switch gears to maybe, thinking about someone who wants to purchase a home now as an investment. So that does come into play right now where, I've got clients that just like investments. So it's so high, but maybe it's going to go higher, right? So where else can I put my money? And a lot of people may be looking at investment property. And what I wanted to kind of understand is if someone goes for an investment property, what are the rule changes maybe with a mortgage or a down payment? How does that all work?
So, and with investment property, if you're buying a house that you're not going to occupy as your primary residence or use as a secondary home, where like a vacation home, straight rental property, on a single-family home, they're required to put a 20% down payment. On a multifamily property, up to 4 units, is a 25% down payment requirement.
Okay.
Okay. The interest rates are also higher on investment properties than an owner-occupied.
How much, like a lot higher?
Well, it depends on the investor. What's recently happened, that's been another significant change, the contracts that Fannie and Freddie have with, they're still under oversight of the federal government. And the federal government is only allowing a certain percentage of the portfolio, the loans that they buy, to be vacation properties and investment properties.
Okay.
So that's negatively impacting interest rates both on vacation homes and on investment properties. Vacation homes used to be the same rate as a primary residence. Now they're 1/4 to 0.5% higher. Investment properties, good credit, single family, would be used to be maybe 0.3% higher. Now we're seeing those closer to 0.75% higher. So the rates are definitely higher in those types of properties.
Okay. I think about this, I don't know if it's an appropriate question, if you can answer it, and it seems simple, but I'm sure it's not, but I think about this, if I were to look at purchasing an investment property or any property, and I waited for the price to come down, a lot of people I hear say, well, at that point, the interest rates will go up. And do they work inversely like that? And how close in time? Is it always different?
Yeah.
Any insight to that?
No, that's not necessarily true. I mean, in a normal market, usually when you see home values going up, interest rates are going up because you have a strong economy.
Yep.
Interest rates have not been going up, but home values are going up. And the home values are going up is because of the lack of inventory. There just aren't enough properties out there. I have a theory that there's a whole supply of inventory out there that hasn't hit the market because people who are making bids on houses right now that need to sell their existing home to buy, so they want to make a contingent offer.
Yeah.
Those offers aren't even being considered right now.
Okay, yeah.
So how many people are sitting on the wayside waiting to list their home? They don't want to sell their house because they've got nowhere to go. So what we're seeing, where properties used to go into contract where it was contingent on someone selling, now people are selling their houses, but the sale is contingent on them finding a house to buy.
Wow.
So it's a very unique market.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's interesting. Okay, so to kind of to wrap things up here, a lot of people have refinanced in past years. Is there a rule of thumb, like, of what you should consider? Like, hey, I refinanced a year ago. I refinanced 2 years ago. Are there any that or any other things that you would say, hey, I'm thinking about refinancing. I should look into it if this, this, and this are my situation?
The best advice is go to a good professional who can examine it for you, because it's not a set rule like, oh, if I'm going down 0.5%, then it makes sense. Depends on what the closing costs are, if you can get a no closing cost deal. Another big factor is the size of the loan. You know, someone who has a $75,000 loan, if you're only going to drop down 0.75%, when you consider the fees, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
You know, but if you have a $475,000 loan and you're going down 0.75%, probably worth it.
Right.
So there's a lot of factors to consider.
Yeah. Well, as always, great information. I appreciate
Thanks.
you being here physically. It's much easier, so it's good to talk across the table. So we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Okay.
When we return, we're going to talk about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Stay tuned.